Welcome to Super Entrepreneurs Podcast. Today we have with us Ralph DiBugnara. Hopefully I pronounced your last name correct.
Yeah, you got it. You got it right.
Oh, that's awesome. Because, sometimes I make a mistake.
No, it's pretty good. It's not an easy one the first time either. So you did a good job.
Oh, no, that's thank you so much. Is that Italian?
Italian, yeah.
Ah, nice. Awesome, my friend. So, we always like to start the show by kind of allowing the guests to take the stage and introduce themselves in their own words. Would you mind?
Sure. So my name is Ralph DiBugnara. I'm a mortgage and real estate professional for the last 21 years, I guess now at this point. I run a pretty large mortgage division. That's really my main day-to-day. And besides that, a lot of my life is my own personal real estate portfolio, which consists of a lot of short-term rentals at this point now. That's a big portion of it. So Airbnb stuff is a big portion of it. We also have Disruptors Network, which is our podcast and TV show. The TV show was on Apple TV, Amazon Prime, Roku last year. And now this year it's going to be on DirecTV. Season 2 is going to be on DirecTV. So that's premiering hopefully in October. We're still working on a release date. And I have a book coming out in a week, actually. Well, the 31st. My first book is called The Growth Trap. And that's really a story about kind of my growth and failure through business and the traps that I got caught in. And I interview a lot of other people who are like me, entrepreneurs, whether they're famous or not, and just kind of traps that got caught in on the way to success. So that book's coming out. It's available on all platforms, Amazon, Barnes & Noble's, Target, and that's the 31st. So that's, I guess, the short Reader's Digest version of me.
Oh, that's great. That's great, Ralph. That's great. And, I always say that, any book that anybody mentions, I feel that it should be given the time and the energy to review it, read it. You know what I mean? Like not just the whatever books that you may think that you need to read, or someone that you respect kind of recommended a book, but any book that comes up, like you mentioned, this book for me is so valuable because I want to read what other entrepreneurs went through, even though I know, because I went through it, right? I know everyone, there's a struggle always, right? Because there's a big risk we're taking as entrepreneurs, right? So there's always going to be a story, but it's so amazing to kind of read a book, read a story, find out what troubles they went through, how they overcame them. And it can only you can only find that in books, I find.
I agree with you. I mean, I read every single day. It's a staple within my life.
Yeah, me too.
Which is how I ended up writing something, because I got all this knowledge, and you access so much that other people are working on that you can relate to through reading. So I agree with you. Like I really feel like it should be given the time. Sometimes I feel like I don't even give the stuff I'm reading enough time, and I have to go back and read it again. So I'm 1,000% with you on that.
Yeah. Like I agree with that as well. Like I'll do a book more than once. I won't, if it's a book is good and I have received something from it, I'll read it more than once.
Yeah, I'm with you on that.
Yeah, it's beautiful. But do you do audio or do you read?
I'm audio.
Same here.
So I kind of task stack in the morning. So I'll get up and exercise every single morning, and I'll listen to an audiobook while I'm exercising. So it's really a good start for me, because I'm kind of feeding my brain and I'm giving myself energy. And so I do audio, and that really works.
Yeah, it works for a lot of entrepreneurs. Audio is so much better. That's why podcasts are so successful, right? Especially the entrepreneur ones. You just put them in your ear and you just listen.
You're good to go.
Yeah. So how did you get into this short term? Like, there's other opportunities, right, where you can invest in a single family home, for example, or apartment building, whatever, and just get a lower income, but a monthly kind of stable income, for example. Why would you choose short term like Airbnb compared to that?
So it really started for me around the beginning of COVID, actually. That's when I started to go really heavy towards that. And there was a little bit of a dip in that market. Airbnbs were kind of frozen because nobody could stay anywhere. So I started to see that there was a need, because before COVID, there was a very, very high demand for it. And then after COVID, there was less properties available. So it was kind of like this place in the market. I was like, well, I see an opportunity here. So that's how it started. We changed one of my long-term rental properties over to a short-term rental property. And then I really saw the light. And then I started to go out to purchase properties that was specifically for this. So over the last 2 years, I've acquired about 14 properties that are strictly Airbnb short-term rentals. And it's a lot more work for sure. It's definitely more work. It's like running a hotel, but it's also it's a higher rate of return on my money. So, like anything else, as you know, like the more you get paid, the more you're going to work. So we learned the system with it, and I really believe in it as an investment strategy.
No, that's great. And I want to ask you, do you do those the swan the towels, the swan towels, and different animal shaped towels?
My properties are all over the place. So I don't have the same cleaners, but I do have cleaners at 3 of my luxury properties that do the swans.
That do that, right?
Yeah. I love it. Yeah, and you know what? It's the little things, Shaheed, that people really like. You know what I mean? So it's like those little things. I've learned that the good stays are really in the details with people. So that little stuff is important.
Yes, so true, Ralph. Like I live by the small details, because that small details have a way bigger effect on subconscious than anything else. The conscious, we're so busy, right? Everything just whizzes by us.
I
agree. Those little things, all of a sudden, they just kind of get feeded in, and you remember, I went to that place, and like I still remember where I've seen those kind of things. You know what I mean?
I agree with you, and it makes it a good experience. And I even kind of I live my life kind of that way. Like even the properties I buy, they're properties of places that I had fond memories of in those areas. Like, so I know if it's an area that I like for a specific reason and I want to go back, then chances are there's some other people who are like me. So I even buy properties kind of around that theory.
That's great. And do you recommend doing any specific or luxury type improvements? For example, if you buy a property in a good location that is going to be picked up quite often on these short-term platforms, would you add a hot tub if you could? Would you add a pool? Like, do you do those things?
Yeah, so it depends on the area for sure. But here's what I would say: 2 things. Just basic things that I think are very, very important. We're in a recession at this point now, and we're probably going to see some kind of dip in the housing market, right? I think that the properties that are safe, and my properties that I've seen that have done well, are properties that are in vacation areas that were always vacation areas, pretty much, right? So like the first thing you can really do is find a property in an area that has other attractions besides your house, right? So whether it's a beach or it's a lake or it's a historical downtown or it's wineries or whatever, get something that's going to draw people in that's just not your house. Because so that's first, because it gives you kind of the thing. Some of the things I found that have been really, really helpful within the houses are definitely pools and hot tubs for sure. My houses with those attributes do better. Being pet friendly is a big help with Airbnb. I think that people want to travel with their pet. So that's definitely something I would do. I have a property that has a home gym, and that has really, really helped. So I think there's little things like that definitely help. But I think the most important thing is find homes in areas that have attractions besides just your house.
That's excellent, because, there are people that pick up properties for Airbnb just because they're getting a good deal, right? So compared to that, that's a really good point, right? So if someone's looking at, I'm getting a solid deal here, I can do good on Airbnb, but the location is not like the typical location that does well, like vacation spots, but it does good.
Absolutely.
In those situations, I think the recommendation for that type of individual is that, just step back and just take a look at those locations and then compare.
Yeah, and that's the biggest thing, because you see a lot of articles out there right now. Is Airbnb going to be down? And if you really look at the stats, and I do, because it's something obviously that I live in every single day, the demand for these properties is actually up. But what is also up is the amount of properties that are on the market to be rented. Post-COVID, a lot more people have caught onto the trend and doing that. But I do think the houses that are going to have the most trouble over the next couple of years when people are spending less money is homes that are just like the same house next door, or the homes that don't have anything specific about the area that you want to be in, except that you just needed someplace to stay. I think those houses are going to have a harder time renting for what they were renting for during COVID. I think during COVID and those kind of times, people just wanted to get away. When the economy was moving, people needed places to stay. I think the stuff that slows down is that kind of stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. Such a great point. And then for someone wanting to kind of park their money and get something or get involved in the short term, what would your recommendation be if they starting from scratch? What should they be doing? First is obviously research to find the right location, or do you recommend first making arrangements to have the down payment ready? And then what are the steps that you recommend?
So I think that zeroing on an area that you want to buy in is definitely first, right? Like, hey, this is where I'm going to start looking, right? Having funds available to do it for sure. But I think finding an area that makes the most sense for you. And here's the thing, the beautiful thing about Airbnb and VRBO, all the information is out there. There are websites that'll give you exact numbers for exact houses and what they rent it for. So you can go, I use a website called AirDNA. I have a course based on this, by the way. It's called The Next Real Estate Gold Rush. So if anybody's interested in short-term rentals, you want to get in, I have a course. It's the nextrealestategoldrush.com. And I go through my A to Z steps on what I did right, wrong, and indifferent of this. But all the stats are out there, right? So AirDNA.co will give, if you put a zip code in, you have to pay for the zip codes, but if you put a zip code in, it'll give you the exact stats for that zip code, what the house was rented for, what the demand amount for was, what the occupancy rate for is. And if you look at the top properties in the area, it'll tell you the dollar amount for the year that they actually rented for, what the average daily rate for. So you can really zero in on an area and say, hey, I want to be in this zip code. I know that this is going to be my competition. So I have to have a house that's comparable to this property. And if I do that, I probably should be able to make about this much amount of money. Now I'm simplifying it, but the stats are out there. So you can really make conscious decisions. So I think first is finding an area that first you like, that has a decent amount of income potential in, and third, where it's legal to do short-term rentals. So it's important to the local municipalities and see that, making sure what their short-term rental rules are. But that's where I would start. Yeah,
that's great, because, a lot of, and for the audience, for example, a lot of people, hear this stuff, and then Ralph just shared some amazing links and ideas to research, right? To look into this. But from my experience, my advice or what my recommendation would be is always invest in some kind of expertise, knowledge, either, a course, mentorship, coaching, something like that. I know it costs a lot more, but the reason I'm saying that is because that information, that knowledge that they're sharing, they have very pinpointed details that you would miss otherwise, and make mistakes, and then, waste time. And we don't want to waste time. We don't want to waste money. That's why you invest, you find out.
You're 100% right. What you're buying is time. My course is $987. What you've bought with $997 is my time over the last 2 years and all the mistakes that I've made. So that's an excellent point, Jade. Really, really good point.
Yeah, because I see it too much. Ralph, I'm in the public, right? So I see this. They say, oh, that pointer, that what you shared was amazing. It helped me, and I'm glad it helped. I'm glad, but just be very careful, because that's one point. There might be 10 other linked points that you don't know, and then it might be okay for now, but what if, right? So you want to make sure you have your T's crossed, I's dotted. You want to make sure you know everything, so you don't hit a hiccup, or you don't hit a bump as much as possible, of course.
Yeah,
you avoid it, right?
You're on the money.
Yeah. So that's great. So do you do public speaking too, right?
Yeah, so we do some stuff with Disruptors Network, but we've done we did a lot of it before COVID, and then COVID kind of slowed us down a little bit. Now we've gotten back to it, where we have really educational seminars where we're trying to train people how to either build their business through their branding, or just build their business through different sales strategies. So we just had a conference a few months ago called Decoding the Disruptors, And we had Brad Lee, we had Kevin Harrington, who was on Shark Tank. I had Dottie Herman, and I had them come in and we had them speak to our community about, what are your sales strategies for this year? And what are you branding and how are you building a business? So a lot of the stuff I'm doing is built around that. I get asked to speak sometimes about my story, and that really is what the growth trap is. And I explain kind of how I started. I went like this and like this and like this, and it's not a straight line up, but like, what have I learned from my failures and how am I using that now to make the right decision? So yeah, a little bit, we're doing a little bit of public speaking.
Yeah. So then were you always someone that wanted to go into entrepreneurship or investment or mortgage, for example? Is that like the business side of you that made you go into the mortgage world?
I think no, it wasn't actually. I think it was always in my brain. I grew up in Brooklyn, New York, and I grew up. My father was a teacher. My mother was an educator as well. He was a principal, and I knew that I didn't want to do that because my father said teachers in New York City don't make any money. Don't become a teacher, right? So and I saw people around me, mostly people who were making money were doing the wrong things. So I learned that at a younger age that that's not what I wanted either. But I wasn't very good in school. So when I graduated college, I just graduated because I kind of had to, and I just made it through. And there was no jobs. It was 2001, 2002 when the .com bubble had just burst. So there weren't a lot of jobs out there. There were sales jobs. So my first job was I was selling copiers door to door, because it was the only job I could really get. And then I had a friend who was in mortgages. He said, hey, why don't you come try this out? I'm working for a new startup company. They're going to go public. I can put you in the training course and get licensed, but it's commission only. So I was like, I guess I'll save up money for a couple of months and I'll try that. And that's what I did. And it just happened to be a good time I got into business, and I kind of rode that wave from 2002 to 2007. But during that time period, I started buying real estate. I started other businesses. I had the entrepreneur spirit, but I just didn't know what direction they kind of pointed. And then in 2008, the market crashed. And it was a complete start over for me. I lost everything in the crash. I lost my properties. I lost the apartment I was living in. I moved from a penthouse apartment on Wall Street to a 600 square foot studio in Staten Island, New York. So it was a complete start over for me, which was in hindsight, the best thing that ever happened to me. But at the time it was a lot of pain. I just dug out and I started over, and it didn't, I think the thing I learned with it most is that when you're on top, you never think it's going to end. And when it's over, you never think you're going to get it back. Right. Like that's the famous saying. And I really believe that. So when I lost everything and I started over, I was just going 100 miles an hour to try to get back to where I was comfortable with money again. I didn't care about anything else. So then I got back to being comfortable and I was unhappy. I was like, this isn't it. I don't want to be comfortable. This isn't what I'm meant for. So then I started really getting back to what my entrepreneurship was and starting other businesses and opening other things. And the challenges, I think, failing and succeeding and all that other stuff really have helped me address who I really am in life. And it's somebody who needs constant obstacles. I need constant competition. I need constant stuff that I can strive for to really be, content in my daily activities.
Yeah. Well, Ralph, I always say this, that, for example, for me, my failures made me, my failures, my mistakes is what created who I am today. So, you have to go through it, right? Many call it like success tax, right? Like you have to pay this tax. You have to fail, you have to learn, but you learn from it. You don't emotionalize it. But your situation, when you lost everything, what got you to go back in? Because many don't, right? Many stop there and they go back to working or get a job or something. What was it? What was that one thing internally that got you going again?
I think at first it was pride. I was really one of the first people out of my group of friends to make it anything. And I think I was too prideful to admit that I had failed so miserably. Yeah. Right? So I think first it was like, well, I don't want anybody to know that I'm a failure. So I'm going to move the place I moved, and I moved out of my apartment, nobody even knew where I was. I just was kind of, and I just, because I didn't want anybody to know that I had failed. So I think stupid pride was first. And then once I started to gain traction again, I was like, wow, I really, because, the whole thing too, Shahid, is I think when you fail the first time, especially when you fail majorly, you start to feel almost like you were an imposter. And I think that was my first instinct. I was like, I was luck. Like I just got lucky. The market was good. I don't really know what I'm doing. But when I started to work at it, because I had no choice, I had bills to pay. So I started to just continue to work at it. I started to realize I started to have success again. I'm like, wow, I can really do whatever I want as long as I put effort into it. And I think that was where I really found the need to kind of go again, right? Like, all right, well, I can repeat this. And if it crashes again, so what? I'll rebuild it again. And I think I think the failure, like you just said, is what really empowered me to really keep going and keep looking for more things that I could fail at almost, you know?
Yeah, I guess intimidating for a lot of people, right? But as entrepreneurs or seasoned entrepreneurs, especially with that foundational work, that mindset stuff, like how we look at things, for example, that helps to take that additional step again, right? Because, you know, it can be scary.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So I'm glad that you did it.
Yeah.
I'm glad that you kept going. Are you planning on writing more books? Are you, I just have this feeling that I think you're going towards that route where you're going to just be publishing books. You can do everything else, but I think you have some kind of passion in the books.
You know, I think what I enjoy most is educating people. Like, I think that's where it's funny. Because my father was an educator and he told me not to be one, but I think what I actually enjoy most is educating people. And that includes my own kids, the people that I work with, myself. And, you know, when I feel most happy and empowered when I'm giving somebody else my experiences and explaining to them how I failed and how they could succeed and avoid what I did. So I think if those books include me helping other people get around things and even the course I built for the short-term rentals was because everybody saw I was doing it and I kept getting phone calls like, well, how'd you do this and how'd you do that? And I was just like, you know what? I'm just going to put a course together. And so I can just say, hey, go get the course. You know what I mean? But I think if it includes educating, I think I'll write more books for sure. Definitely.
Yeah, no. Yeah. I see it. And that course, like it shows, you know, the pricing that you added for that course is phenomenal. Like it's peanuts if you think about it right now, especially with you know. And
I wanted it to be viable. I didn't want people to think, hey, like I was like, look, I want easy to get in the game, but I wanted it to be something that was a price that people could really afford, especially if they're trying to buy a house. Like $1,000, if you're trying to buy a house, could go towards something else. But that $1,000 is going to save you $100,000 if you really take heed to what I said, because I've lost that much trying to do some of the things that didn't work.
Yes. So what are your, next 5-year goals? Like, what are you planning on? What are you envisioning? You're going to see yourself in the next 5 years?
So, you know, the real estate is always something that I'll want to be very, very heavily involved in. So I think, you know, what I'm working on now is I'm working on creating a fund that may be a token. I'm working on the idea that it actually may be a token instead of an actual real estate fund that is going to give people access to invest in my real estate portfolio and my growing portfolio. And a lot of my focus over the next 5 years, besides my mortgage business, which is always going to be a staple for me, is going to be based around that. And I think really because I'm passionate about it. You know, I like going to find the properties. I like making them profitable. I like putting them together. I like creating experiences for people. So I think a lot of what I'm going to do is going to be based around that fund, which I'm hoping to release late this year, early next year.
Oh, that's awesome. That's great. Definitely. When you release that fund, get in touch with us. I would love to share and support and help you out with spreading the message. We can do like some lives or something.
That would be awesome. Yeah, 100%. I really appreciate that. I will.
My pleasure. Yeah, my pleasure, Ralph. So what kind of suggestion could you give an entrepreneur that is looking to increase their cash flow, but doesn't want to invest anything? That's like one of the biggest searches, right?
So it's a great question. And I honestly feel like right now is such a big opportunity for people to make huge strides in their career and the entrepreneurship and everything like that, because, you know, we're in what's defined as a recession. And the definition of recession is 2 consecutive down fiscal quarters based off of gross domestic product, right? So basically the value of things were down for 2 consecutive quarters, right? But if you listen to every major entrepreneur, right, the Ed Milet's, the Tony Robbins, the Dean Graziosos, all those guys, what they'll tell you is that they made their biggest strides during recessions. Like they gain the most because there's less competition during recessions, right? So the lanes are more wide open. Even though there's less business, the lanes are more wide open. So I think what you're going to have to invest as an entrepreneur is your time. But the one thing I also that you should look at is even Warren Buffett did it this week, right? Warren Buffett has always doubled and tripled down on things that he had a lot of experience in during recessions. So he didn't start something new, right? He doubled down on what he felt like his strongest asset was or his strongest skill was. And he perfected it because he knew it was going to be needed during down economic times. So I think whatever you're working on right now, whatever you feel like that you have some substance in or experience in or whatever it is, double and triple down your time on that stuff. And I think that you will see, exponential rewards at the end of this recession, which recessions usually last about 18 months. That's historically how long they last. Whether this lasts that long or not, I'm not sure. But at the end of it, you will have so much momentum coming out of it that it's inevitable that you will find some success. So I think that, investing time and doubling down on the things that you know right now is very, very powerful.
Amazing. Thank you, Ralph, for that suggestion and recommendation. It was great advice. We also like to ask our guests what their innermost superpower is that got them to this point.
That's really, really good. So I think my superpower is holding myself accountable. I really hold myself accountable every single day, and I find different ways to do it. Like, for instance, we talked about reading. I have a timer on my phone that I have to read a certain amount every single day, and I look at that every single day. I run pretty regularly. I set a goal at the beginning of the year of how many miles I want to have for the year, so it keeps me accountable every single week. Like, hey, if I don't run 20 miles this week, I can't get to my goal of 1,300 miles this year. So I hold myself accountable to everything, right? And if I can't do it myself, I find ways and or people to hold me accountable. Like, I'm not great at keeping a strict diet. It's just the one thing that I can't seem to do. I like sweets. So it's the one thing that I'm not good at. So, I found a nutritionist that holds me accountable every single, and I have to weigh in and I have to send them pictures, and he's annoyed with me if I'm late. So I find if I can't do it myself, I find other people to hold me accountable. But I think that's my superpower.
That's awesome. Such an important one, right? Because those voices we hear in our head, especially if we're not centered yet. Once we get centered, obviously is more control, but without that center, it's those thoughts they run a rampage, right? So even if you make a commitment, those voices say, well, you don't need to do it today. It's okay. You can read tomorrow. Yeah. Right. Yeah. So you say, that's right. Maybe you're right. Maybe today is not a good day. It's a nice weather. I'll go for a walk instead. I don't want to put it in my ear. So there's no voices. They're arguing with each other, right? Yeah. And then he says, okay, good. Let's go for a walk.
Yeah,
so that accountability, I find that is such a crucial component in entrepreneurship, but it's not there because there's foundational work that needs to be done, obviously, to get to that point. But it's such an important point. Like, that is such an important superpower. Accountability is everything to get you in action consistently.
100%. Yeah. I mean, the consistency that accountability affords me every single day is every bit of why I'm successful in anything. It's just, I consistently keep myself accountable, and that really is helped me a lot.
That's amazing. Well, Ralph, it was amazing talking to you. Audience, you could see Ralph is a wonderful person. He's out to help serve. Key. You want to work with people that are out there looking to serve others. And that quality is, as you can tell, you can see it's not in everyone. So when you see that, give kind of personality, if you're looking to increase your cash flow or looking to increase your net worth or your business or anything, get in touch with people like Ralph, because that's where you will get that genuineness, right? And that course that he's talking about, I have nothing to do with it. Like, I'm not saying it for commission or nothing like that. I'm just saying it because it's a good value. And if you can get something out of it that can help you increase your cash flow, it's a good investment because it's a low investment. So that's something that you can look at. And again, thank you again, audience. Love you guys. Get in touch with us, engage, follow us, comment on our posts, send me a DM. Love to hear from you. Same with Ralph. He will love to hear from you guys, I'm sure. And again, Ralph, thank you for your time today. to come on the show. I really appreciate you. I really appreciate your struggle before and now the happiness and the success and the growth that you're achieving. And keep going, my friend. Keep going.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. I appreciate all the information you're putting out to the world. I think it's very valuable. So thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.